Welcome back to the channel and part 3 of Stop Bluesing All Wrong. If you've not done so already, I suggest you check out episodes 1 and 2 so you know exactly what we're talking about here. And the only other thing you'll need that's not covered in those first 2 episodes is a basic working knowledge of the modes. Other than that, you're good to go. So let's crack on. Let's look at the dominant 7th chord and how it works in a bit more detail. Now, in classical harmony, a dominant 7th chord is the 5th chord or the 5 chord of any major key, and it usually, and the expectation is that it will resolve back to the 1. So for our A7 chord, that would be the chord 5 of D major, so we'd probably do this. Okay, in a blues, however, it makes that move, but the chord it moves to is another dominant 7th chord. So that poses another question, another tension that needs to be resolved when it resolves back usually. So technically, every time we change chord in a dominant 7th blues, we're changing key from a classical perspective. And that's why it's a bit harder than people imagine to play these changes correctly, because you're not just sitting in one key, you've got to address those changes. So the thing that drives this dominant 7th chord is the tritone. Back to that again. That tense interval in there needs to resolve, and I say the expectation normally is it's going to go. But as I say, in a blues, when it goes from one dominant 7th to another, it just goes and sets up another tension. Back and forth we go. So to really address those changes, that's the thing, that's the element. You've got to play and get the notes right. And that's what these previous 2 videos have been about. But here we're going to dig in a bit deeper and see what other options there are. To make a deeper connection between the chords we're playing and the notes we're playing, we need to start thinking in terms of 7-note scales rather than just the truncated 5-note pentatonic. And as every dominant 7th chord is the 5 chord of a major key, we most likely want to be thinking about it in terms of the corresponding mode. So the 5th mode of a major key is the Mixolydian, which is like a major with a flat 7th, which of course correlates with that. So yeah, it sounds like this. Now, as I said previously, technically, each of the 3 chords, A7, D7, E7, are all in a different key. So that would mean 3 different Mixolydians, which might lead you to do this sort of thing. Oh, not that. A7 there, up to there, D7 there, and then E7 there. No, that's not practical. I mean, even if we jump strings. Too much to think about. So what we need here is a bit of modal relativity. So there's a common tone to both the A7 and the D7, and it's the A. So we can play from the A, and again this sort of anchors us around the minor pentatonic shape, which we're always going to keep referring back to if we're really playing anything blues sounding. So A7 is going to give us A Mixolydian, but D7, well, that's chord 5 of G major, the key. So we need the mode of that key that starts in A. So G is 1, A is 2, so it's the 2nd mode of G major, which is A Dorian. So that we could just learn to play those back to back without necessarily moving position. And all that's going to mean is one note's going to change. So for instance, A7 here, C sharp, C sharp. When I change to A Dorian, the C sharp becomes C. So A7. And so on. So you can stay in one position and learn the correct notes for each chord. So a good practice strategy for this would be hit the A7, get the sound in your head, and then you can land on the top there and play the tritone for that particular chord. And then you might go to the D7 and play through the A Dorian for that. Like that. And then back again. Both directions. And that'll give you a really good toe hold on what's going on between these, and that opens things up. Now of course you can then jazz these up, blues these things up with the chromatic passing notes. So and combine them with the pentatonics, which we'll go through a bit more detail in a bit. So on to the E7. Now E7 is the 5 of A major, so we could just play A major. The only problem with that is that we'd be starting on an A, which is not a chord tone of E7. So one way around that is to drop down to the G sharp that is. Now that would mean that we'll be playing the 7th mode of A major, which is G sharp Locrian, which is like this. Or the other possible solution is to go up one from the A to the B, and that would mean A major, B Dorian, which of course are just the same notes. Now ideally you want to be familiar and comfortable with both and practice the switching ideas. So put all that together: A7, A Mixolydian, D7, A Dorian, E7, G sharp Locrian, or B Dorian. Like that. Right, so the next thing you're going to want to do is try playing those modes along with the track. Now, it's not going to be a matter of just running up one and back down and run up the next and back down. You're going to do it in real time with the track. So you need to change to whichever mode you need to change to as you're playing. So that's a bit more of a challenge. So you might be halfway down the Mixolydian when it needs to change to the Dorian and vice versa. And it's about listening, and it's about knowing that, you know, basically C sharps are going to change to Cs and vice versa as the chords go back and forth. A Mixolydian. They're changing, but I'm nowhere near as C until here. Back again, C sharp there. C sharp. C natural. C natural again. C sharp now. Okay, G sharp Locrian, A Dorian for the D7, like so. So you've got the mode and the chord joined up a little bit in your mind and on the fretboard. So the next thing to do is start adding in some chromatic blues notes. Otherwise, it's not going to sound very bluesy, is it? So let's go through each chord in turn and look at the added notes you can throw in along with the pentatonic to make it sound like a blues. So A7. So A Mixolydian. Well, obviously A is the root of the chord and the scale and the mode, so yeah, moving on. The B, well, that's the second note of the scale, but really it's the 9 of the chord. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. So you might have to hear it in this way. And in fact, that's one of the chords you're hearing over the backing track. So, and then we get C natural. Now, this isn't really a C harmonically, interestingly, because we've already got C, we've got C sharp in the lower octave. So as we go through 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, it's actually what we call a sharp 9. And this is a sort of integral part of the blues sound, because combined with the A7, it gives us this, which most people know as the Hendrix chord. In this case, A7 sharp 9. And very often that's that B sharp, to be technically correct, C natural. It causes that dissonance that we love, that funkiness. But it's probably going to resolve upwards into the chord, like that. Moving on, the D. Well, it's kind of a neutral note, really. It's sat next to the C sharp of the chord. So as you run down, again, it's got a tendency to pull down. Okay. Next note up would be the flat 5 or sharp 4, but probably thinking about it as a flat 5. And again, it can resolve either way. Then the fifth itself, well, neutral note, F sharp, the 6. Also, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. So that has a harmonic function and sound resolved within it. But again, and again, that's a chord you can hear on the backing track. Right, on to the G. Well, that's in the chord. Probably going to go that way. Likewise, the G sharp, which is nothing to do with the chord at all. So, you might do your typical. And then back to the root. So whenever you get the C in there, or the B sharp, that's going to pull up to the major third. Like that. So, addressing D7 correctly. D7, right. So, we're going to use the A Dorian shape to play the correct notes. So starting on the A, that's the 5th of the chord. Okay. B. Okay. Well, that's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, 11, 13. And again, that's a voicing. Not uncommon in the blues, but it's an upper extension. So, next up, C. Well, that's in the chord. With the notes of tritone. C sharp. Now this is definitely out and wrong, but we can still use it, as we'll see in a minute. Next up, D. Well, that's the root, no problem. Okay. E flat. Now that's the flat 5 of the minor pentatonic, but in relation to D7, it's 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, flattened. So this. So that turns up more often in a jazz blues than anything else, but still there, and again it will resolve itself down. Oh, next up the E. Well, that's just the 9. That's a fairly static one. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. And you can hear that again, that's the chord used on the backing track there. And it's a note of the minor pentatonic. So again, just sits. Going on from there. Okay, E sharp or F. Well, we're calling it E sharp because it's the sharp 9. Hendrix chord again. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Like that. Probably pulling down. Where are we? F sharp. Well, obviously, that's one of the notes of the tritone. Safe in it. Next up, G. Well, that's kind of a moving on note, because it's a semitone away from the F sharp that we've just done. That's going to crunch a bit over a D7, so yeah, you can play it, but it's going to be a move away from note, if you like. And then you've got the G sharp A flat. Again, we'll think of that as a flat 5. But also, that passing note back to the A. So the way the C's and C sharps work on this is the kind of opposite way round to the way they worked on over A7. So when you're playing a C sharp, you can hit that note, but it's going to want to resolve down into the chord. Like so. As opposed to the other way around when it was A7. It's got to go up from the C to the C sharp. So here are some examples of how we might take these different elements and combine them to create lines. So I'm going through and thinking of the bottom 3 strings as the A Mixolydian, so this is over the A7. So got the root, minor 3rd, sharp 9, going to the major 3rd, 5th, 7th. Then kind of going into the pentatonic here. Minor 3rd to major 3rd, 5th. So that's the F sharp there. Bending the minor 3rd up to the major 3rd. So that bit's obviously minor pentatonic based. And then going around the major 3rd, almost like a jazz enclosure. So here's the same line, but modified to fit over D7 now. Right, so we start on A, straight to C, we can do the E again, G to A. Now this time we're not going to go C, C sharp, we're going to go straight from C to D. Over to the E, and then over to the A. And then we can go to the F sharp, because of course that's part of the tritone for D7. And this time I'm bending the B up to C, so again, targeting. And then coming down through G. To D, down to C sharp. And again, that's a tension note now in this context, that's going to drop to C. And then to A. Okay, so that's it for part 3. Stand by for part 4 at some point. There's plenty more to talk about here. If you've not done so already, please click the subscribe button, like, comment, get involved, all that good stuff. It really helps. And see you next time.